In this episode, I want to show that the narrative, or the storyline, is built off of the emerging theology and beliefs of this Gentile and Greek church that has taken over the once Jewish Messianic movement. At this point, Jews have abandoned Christianity, and they're not going to put up with this Gentile takeover. With that, the narrative becomes whatever it needs to be, and you can see it right there in the Gospels as each narrative innovates over time. So that was Paul. The next chronological order would be Mark. Mark is written around 70 CE, just after or during the Jewish war in Jerusalem. The Gospel originally ends at verse 8 of chapter 16. The story goes something like this. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and someone named Salome bring spices to anoint the dead body of Jesus. Early in the morning, they see the stone to the tomb is already rolled away. They enter it, see a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side. So it's a man dressed in a white robe. They're alarmed. The man in white says, "Don't be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus, the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He's not here. Go tell the disciples and Peter. He is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will find him, just as he told you." They tremble and are bewildered. The women flee the tomb and say nothing to anyone because they were afraid. This is the original ending of Mark. Quite a contrast to the later Gospels. I get this feeling that around this time, the idea was not quite concretized. You have the original storyline of visions and appearing, feelings of presence, feelings of him talking to people, maybe seeing him in dreams, and the later first century idea of him being physically walking, talking, and eating, hanging out, eating dinner. Remember, Mark is at the threshold of the Jewish world, abandoning Christ as the Messiah, which is such an interesting idea, that the Jewish world who would have known Jesus, would have been early adopters, they have abandoned it completely at this point, especially by the Jewish wars, and that's around when Mark is writing, around 70, just after the war. Their view of him was very different from the later gospel era and the resulting 2nd, 3rd century Gentile church. Mark is right there between both worlds. It makes sense. Let's just leave it mysterious and let the reader fill in the blanks. What was he thinking to just leave it that open-ended? It's almost like there's all these kind of competing ideas or all kinds of rumors or whatever it is, whatever is going around, and it's like, how do you even put that into words? How do you even make it rationally make sense? Well, let's just not put anything, and, he's risen, and they say nothing to no one, and we'll just let people fill in the blank.
I mean, it's an interesting point that this happens, or this is written around the time, as you said, when the Jews were starting to abandon Jesus as the Messiah.
Completely abandoned at this point.
Oh, it's completely abandoned
by this point, yeah.
I mean, that's so interesting to me because the 12 disciples were all Jewish. The early church would have been Jewish. So it's not that the Jews abandoned Jesus, but the original Christians abandoned it.
Right. Yeah. It's such an interesting concept. I mean, it's kind of a side conversation, but it's, do you think anyone ever taught us that? No one ever taught us
Absolutely not.
No, it's like, whatever the Gospels say and whatever Paul says, that's Christianity. So the longer ending of Mark, added sometime beginning to mid-2nd century, is full of signs and wonders.
Wait, how many years after the original does it start to show up?
It would have been at least 30 years to like 50 or 60 years. Do we get references?
So the original ending with, the women seeing this man who said he's not here.
They go away in fear and say nothing to anyone.
They go away in fear. He says, go to Galilee, you'll see him there. It ends there. And then later we get an additional 10 or so, 20 verses. I don't remember.
In the later one, he's giving a great commission. Go ye therefore. Added sometime in the mid-2nd century, is full of signs and wonders. Jesus is everywhere talking to everyone. He's appearing here and there, eating. He's rebuking lack of faith. There's a great commission, and which is a go into all the world. And he goes up to heaven at the right hand of God. That's such a difference.
Isn't there also a little verse about him saying you'll be able to handle snakes? And
Yes, there is. There is. Yeah. Like, talk about an innovation. The later church needs that. Other manuscripts after verse 8, where they're trembling and bewildered and they flee the tomb in fear and say nothing to no one, there's added this verse that says, then they quickly reported all these instructions to those around Peter. After this, Jesus himself also sent out through them from east to west the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation. That wasn't even important to the first one, or they didn't even know how to talk about it because it wasn't developed yet.
Well, that theology didn't exist yet.
It was developing at that time through the Greek and Gentile church.
Exactly. So it's a new theology. It's not the theology of the disciples when they existed and when, Jesus was around. It's something that's developed later and it shows up later.
So what part of these 2nd century Greek Gentile world additions are we supposed to believe? Shouldn't Christians not believe the additions, but go closer to the source? The closest source is Mark and his original ending. No, we need the visitations and appearances. We need the eating of meals because it goes with the needed worldview. We need the Great Commission and for the disciples to have gone out everywhere preaching to all nations. It's funny because according to Paul's story and even in Acts, the Jewish Christians are just doing their Jewish thing in Jerusalem, while also adding Jesus as the Messiah that's going to come back and save them physically from their oppressors. It's Paul that brings this whole cosmic nature to the story. The apostles are like, okay, whatever, Paul, go ahead, but we're doing our thing, our Jewish thing. But by the time you get to Matthew and Luke, and especially John, as we'll see, Jesus is equated with God, sitting at his right-hand side. Paul talks about this often in his letters, being seated at the right hand of God. There at creation, all things made by him. Those are not Jewish ideas. Those are Pauline ideas and later Greek and Gentile ideas. So just a quick recap. Mark 16, 1 through 8 is, women find the tomb empty, a young man announces a resurrection, and Jesus never appears. And women flee in fear and silence. But Mark bridges Paul in the later Gospels. Resurrection is proclaimed by that man in white, and that's it. It's not demonstrated. There's no demonstration of the resurrection. It's just like he's alive. Go tell everybody, or go tell the disciples or whoever. So what do we have at the end of Mark? There's this insecurity or unsureness that Mark has in giving details about the resurrected Christ. He mentions no viewers of Christ, just that he's risen, whatever that means. You'd think Mark, being chronologically closer to Jesus than the other gospel writers, would know the stories of the eating and the talking and the appearing and the proclaiming, but he doesn't. Or he knows that those stories are not true or they're exaggerated history, legend. So that's Mark. Fear. Leaving in fear and telling no one. Okay. So which is it, Is he just a vision on the clouds? Is he a light? Let's get to Matthew. Matthew's written around 80 to 85 CE. So we get our first physical appearances from Matthew. It says in Matthew 28, verse 1, after the Sabbath, at dawn, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake. Whoa, cool. Here's our innovations. For an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white like snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the woman, "Do not be afraid, for I know what you are looking for. I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He's not here, he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid, yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, so if you can clasp him, he must have some kind of physicalness to him, right? Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." I wonder if that's part of the story of those, say, 500 from 1 Corinthians, Paul. Maybe that's where those visions were happening. So he's like trying to tie, go to Galilee, and that's there they'll see me.
Yeah.
So verse 11 says, while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and devised a plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money to telling them, "You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed, and this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. Verse 16. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. So it's a mountain in Galilee here in Matthew. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Why would some doubt anyway? That's an interesting thing. Why would they even add that?
I mean,
people must have been doubting,
Why would you doubt it? Who's writing this narrative? Like they know about these soldiers going to the high priest, and they know that there's this money passing. Like they know all these details. Like, yeah, they know these details of what was happening. It's just like, it's clearly just someone made stuff up. Just like you can write
Chief
anything.
priests.
You know every detail. Anyway, sorry I interrupted you,
Not
but
at all.
I've never considered the way the story sounds, but as you read it aloud, it's like, this just sounds like a fictional story where the author knows everything, and as the reader, we know everything. But
Exactly.
But if it's true history, the people who are telling it and writing this down have no idea what would be going on with the high priest.
What it reveals is we have belief and theology that shapes the narrative. We have belief in theology. Now we build our story to tell our belief in theology.
And like, just to kind of to say that in another way, I would say that like probably there were rumors that the body was stolen, right? And so now they're trying to explain that. Well, it's because the priest told them to tell them that, and here's money, and this gets to the
someone
governor.
says, well, what about the guards? They would have blah, 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 blah. Well, they met with the chief priests, and they devised a plan just in case the governor found out.
And now
and there's money involved, wash the hands. That's the story.
And now they can spread the rumor that the disciples stole the body in the night, because probably that was a rumor. I mean, people probably said that, so now they can explain where that originated. Like, I just feel like it's too made up.
It's so silly.
It's too fictional.
Yeah, it's so silly. Verse 18 says, then Jesus came to them and said, so anyway, they're on a mountain in Galilee where Jesus had told them to go.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus told them to go to this mountain in Galilee. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. and surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. It's beautiful.
It's terrible. It's so ridiculous. It's just silly.
Right. Again, it contradicts Paul's stories of what the early church was doing. The Jewish church wasn't going into all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. The Jews had no concept of the Holy Spirit. So Jesus appears to the women. They grab his feet. Again, that's substance. He appears to the disciples on a mountain in Galilee, and some still doubt. So the body is present, but it's not yet scrutinized, meaning like, okay, there must have been some substance there, but then the questions are going, well, so they clasp his feet. I'm reading in Matthew, or that's the story. They clasp his feet. Well, what were his feet like? Were the holes in his feet? I don't know. Someone says, yes, there were holes in his feet. Oh, so it was the body that was crucified. Well, then what about his face? Was his face all bloody and his body, was his clothes bloody? So they have, it keeps innovating, as we're going to see in Luke. But in Matthew, he doesn't eat anything. No one's touching any wounds. There's no extended interactions. He just appears, and whatever that language means.
I'm like
He appears to them. There's a feeling. It's loose language. So we get to Luke, written in 85 or 90 CE. Luke 24 says, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. And when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, he is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee? The Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the 3rd day be raised again. Then they remembered his words. So Jesus said that he's going to be handed over, he's going to be crucified, and on the 3rd day he's going to rise again. That's interesting. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women, because their words seemed to them like nonsense. But Peter, a man, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the stripes of linen lying by themselves. And he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Now the same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. But they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, what are you discussing together as you walk along? And they stood there, faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days? What things? He asked. About Jesus of Nazareth. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but they didn't find the body. They came and told us that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Then some of our companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus. He said to them, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself, which, by the way, Jews have no expectation of the Messiah being killed, or coming back to life, or being God for that matter. So that's nowhere in the Old Testament. Oh, Isaiah 53. That's not about the Messiah. Keeping on going. the listener, if they want to listen to my Matthew episode, we talk about that. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went to stay with them. They didn't know it was Jesus.
Still don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah, when he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" So let's say there was some experience after the tomb, and Peter and they go down there and he's not there. The body's gone. Okay. Then they're walking on the road and some guy's like, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, no kidding, huh? And they go in and they go to some house for the evening. They eat bread, and then they think later, was that Jesus?
Yeah.
Was that? And he disappeared.
Remember how he made us feel? Our hearts burned within us?
Yeah. They didn't know it was him the whole time.
But
now the
he
story
blinded
is like,
us to it. But
him.
now we know. Oh, it's classic. I mean, I've had experiences myself like that where, I remember walking. I was in Ohio at the time. I lived there, and I was walking, and out of nowhere, a man just appeared. He didn't appear, but I didn't see him approach me. And then next thing I know, he's next to me and he's talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally said to me, "Don't you doubt it. There's a God and he's real."
Yeah.
He said something like that. I don't know exactly what he said, but he basically was telling me, don't doubt it.
Yep.
And then I kind of was like back in my head thinking about it. And then next thing I know, I don't know where this man is.
Yep.
And my thinking was, that was an angel.
It was an angel. I've had the same thing happen to me at a park. I know other people who have had those experiences happen to them at a park or at a grocery store. Was that an angel? Was that? And
the longer the time goes by, the fewer details I can remember. Like even 5 years after that, even a year after that happened, I can't quite remember every detail of it. So in my mind, it's even more mystical. He just was like in the moment, maybe I did notice him walk up and walk away, but a year later, I can't remember those details. I just remember what he said. And then I'm like, he just kind of was there and then he wasn't.
Or you tell him that story to me and I tell someone else and the stories, I forget some things like you said. And I also, I say, it was an angel.
Yeah.
I say, it was an angel.
Yeah.
Right? You said, maybe it was an angel, right?
Yeah.
No, it was an angel.
No, it was an angel.
Yeah.
I mean, the description of what happened in Luke is just...
Yeah. Imagine you've spent years with this guy that you think is the Messiah of Israel and is going to bring peace to the world. And he gets killed and you still, you miss him. You believed for years that he was the guy. And then you have an experience like that. How much more?
Yeah.
It was Jesus.
Well,
it was him.
And the telltale sign here is that, they're saying, haven't you heard? Don't you know what happened? And then he basically says, from the beginning, the prophets, look at Moses. They told that the Messiah this was going to happen. It's there. And for them, that re-excited them. They're like, oh, yes. How did we miss this? Their hearts burned within them of all the things this man said. They became re-excited at the possibility that everything that they had previously believed, but now had fallen apart, maybe it is true. And maybe we didn't recognize there was this period of death.
Yeah.
And now he's going to be restored. And this was what was supposed to happen.
Maybe this thing isn't over.
Yes. And now they got that excitement. And now they look back on it. Oh, Jesus was with us.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's again assuming that's assuming that this story does have some truth to it, and isn't again just a narrative that's built around a belief or earlier tradition or some guy in your village tells you this story because he heard it from someone else, like,
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting that the two men here, they're people we don't really know who they are. Like, they give a name for them, but it's not Peter, it's not James, it's not John.
so verse 33, they got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord has risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
So
know
Simon had a different experience.
Yes.
And then the two told what happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them and when he broke the bread. While they were still talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do doubts rise in your minds? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I, myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." So he's answering the questions that everyone wants to know. Now when people read Luke, they go, "Oh, it is flesh and bones, and he's not a ghost. It says right here, he's got flesh and bones, as you see I have. Look at my hands and my feet." And when he had said this, verse 40, he showed them his hands and feet, and while they still did not believe it because of joy and amazement, he asked them, "Do you have anything here to eat?" So he's showing that he has hunger. This resurrected Jesus has hunger. They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he ate it, and ate it in their presence, it says. So, like, literally the narrative is like explaining all the things we want to know. Okay, is he flesh and bone? Check. Does he get hungry? Check. Does he ask for food? Oh, he does. Oh, and he ate it in front of us. So
they're trying really hard to get away from the idea of it's just vision of this spiritual force and this light and this voice, but it's an actual body. They're trying really hard. They're bringing up all the key things to make it very clear.
We're going to answer the questions that Mark himself didn't explain. This is Luke's version. Luke is using Mark. 90% of Mark is in Luke and in Matthew. 90% of Mark is in Matthew. He said to them in verse 44, "This is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. And you know that this is a Gentile speaking, because again, Jews don't have any expectation of a dying and rising Messiah that is also God." Verse 45, then he opened their minds so they could understand the scriptures. He explained the scriptures. The people that had the scriptures, they didn't understand their own scriptures. That God actually meant something different than what was revealed to them. And it took Greeks later to read a poorly translated translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, and it took those Greeks and Gentiles later to understand what God originally meant in the Old Testament. That makes sense.
I mean, it's a favorite trick of Christians today, even when we're like, there's this interpretation and that interpretation and this denomination and that denomination. And, I remember many times from the pulpit, the preachers saying things like, the Lord has to reveal the truth of it to you. It has to be, you can't just read it and understand it. You need special people that the Lord revealed it to.
Pastors who go to seminary.
Well, for us, no.
No. And we knew more than the seminary people.
The seminary people are
they're wrong.
wrong. That's man's institution.
Yeah.
Right. Our preachers were directly from God.
Yeah.
Because these things are hidden.
Yeah.
Which is funny. Why would he write a book and prepare it for us and give it to us and then hide it? Its message, its meaning.
Right. For some white people later.
Yeah. To very select few to
actually tell them what their scriptures actually meant.
Anyways.
And it says here that their minds are open so that they could understand the scriptures. But as we see in the Problems with Luke episode, the writer of Luke doesn't actually understand the Jewish world at all. In fact, every time he does try to explain something about the Jewish world, he gets it wrong. So it's clear that they don't understand the scriptures. So verse 46, he told them, Jesus says, "This is what is written, the Messiah will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day." Or no, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that anywhere. "And repentance for the forgiveness of sins," nope, "will be preached in his name to all nations, beginning at Jerusalem. You are witnesses of all these things. I am going to send you what my Father has promised, but stay in the city until you have been clothed with power from on high." And when he had led them out to the vicinity of Bethany, he lifted up his hands and blessed them. And while he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven. Then they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and they stayed continually at the temple, praising God.
So one thing I didn't realize, but it's standing out because you're quickly going from Mark to Matthew to Luke.
Right.
All of these events in Luke, which is the most detailed we've had so far,
Right.
happen in Jerusalem or just outside Jerusalem. Matthew and Mark say, go to Galilee, that's where he's going to appear to you.
That's right.
And Jesus appeared to them in Jerusalem.
Right.
Then they went to Bethany, which is right outside Jerusalem, and ascended. And I'm thinking, wait, where's Galilee in all of this?
That's a great point.
And he showed up to these guys going to Emmaus. I don't know where Emmaus is, but then they went back to Jerusalem, and that's where Peter had seen him, and then he appears to them in Jerusalem.
Right.
Where's Galilee in the book of Luke?
Right.
It's not there.
Right. And in Matthew, it's like pretty much only Galilee, right?
I don't know. He just says, go to Galilee and
to that mount.
But basically go to that mountain in Galilee, which is to the north. That's like, that's north of Jerusalem. That's not Jerusalem. And I don't see the harmony of the scripture here.
Right.
It's Jerusalem and Luke. I don't know what happens in Galilee and when.
Right.
But apparently nothing.
Right.
I mean, I never picked up on that, except you're reading kind of rapid fire.
Exactly.
Each book.
And John's going to have a different version.
And it's very different.
They're all going to contradict. I mean, already we can look at the contradictions. Who went to the tomb? Who was at the tomb? What was said at the tomb? They all say different things.
Yeah. Like some of those details I've heard people talk about, the angels were, one book left out details. It doesn't mean that they were inconsistent, but they just emphasized different details. But they could all kind of harmonize if you really wanted them to.
Right.
But I don't know how you fit the go to Galilee and that's where I will see you.
Right.
And then I see you in Jerusalem.
And then that's it. Like Matthew's like, go into all the ages and to all nations. And then he leaves, he disappears or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the end.
Yeah.
So where was Jerusalem and all that?
In Galilee.
Yeah. And it goes to the point when you start with belief, then you are going to find ways to make the narrative work. There's all these stories going around. If you have belief, well it's all the same. He rose from the dead and things happened.
The average Christian thinks of, Galilee, Jerusalem, it's where Jesus' ministry was. And they don't think about, that's like, that's a long ways away. Right. And those are two different regions.
Right.
Different cities.
Different cultures.
And one book says he went here, the other book says that was here. Mm-hmm. And when you actually put it on a map and write it out, then it starts to break down. But no, Christians don't do that. They just read it and they think Galilee, they think Jerusalem, they think the same thing. Mm-hmm. But those are different.
Most scholars think Matthew and Luke neither had the other to work with.
It doesn't sound like it to me, for sure.
Right. Exactly.
Luke
and that's why they don't think they had it, because they contradict. I mean, as we'll see in the episode about Luke, they contradict about almost everything.
Well, I mean, the way it sounds to me, Matthew came up with the additional events that then Mark added on. Luke also came up with additional events, but they weren't added on to Mark.
Wait, say that again?
So you've got Mark that stops with them scared.
Yeah.
Matthew and Luke, which kind of build off of Mark.
Right.
Have additional things, but they don't agree.
Right.
But Matthew's additional things match the new addition to Mark.
Right.
So it's almost whoever came up with Matthew added on the details to Mark.
Well,
they kind of match. They're almost word for word match.
They used Matthew.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Right.
Because they're almost a word for word match. It wasn't the
same person. It sounded like you were saying it was the same person. But
that's not what I meant. But yeah. The stories that the extended version in Mark.
That's exactly correct.
Matches what Matthew says.
Yeah.
Whereas Luke.
Go ye therefore.
Yes.
They're meeting with all these people, all these details of conversations.
They parallel very nicely. So it's almost as if the source was the same.
Yeah.
Luke's source is totally different. He wasn't aware of what Matthew came up with. He came up with something different.
Right. Mark, the original gospel, we can't have that.
Yeah.
But in this new late 1st century, 2nd century church, Mark needs to be fixed because there's a problem with it ending that way.
The fact that both Matthew and Luke base a lot of their stuff off of Mark tells me that, but their endings are different. Tells me that they both got to the point where Mark ends early, and then they came up with the extra stuff independently. They didn't know of each other's work. They only knew of Mark. And they added on these details that needed to be added because there were the problems with the followers were falling away because we need more proof.
Right.
We need the fish that's broiled and eat. And so they come up with these additional details that don't match because they don't know each other are doing that. Right. And then Matthews then gets put back onto Mark. But after Luke already
and a lot
used
of details. I mean, there's, like you said, there's even snake handling.
Yes.
Like a lot of beautiful details added to Mark later. It should be noted too that it's not necessarily only that that Matthew, for example, and Luke, for example, are coming up with the stories, but that these are stories that are being passed around. Yeah, maybe they are coming up with some things. Again, maybe they have all these stories and then they turn it into one narrative, right? Again, because they have the belief and they have the stories. Okay, well, then this day Jesus went on the boat over here, and then we'll connect that to when he went over to that city and turn it into a narrative for sure.
But it also tells you that the different groups of believers were not necessarily interacting. Like they've split to a point where one can be having the Luke narrative and the other can have the Matthew narrative, and they both had inherited the original Mark narrative. So they've split, at least not necessarily by choice, but for whatever reason, they're not groups that are overlapping and sharing ideas. They're new ideas that are independently coming together. Right. I mean, it looks very much like genetic evolution, where a species gets isolated in time and space, and new things start to develop and emerge. Right. It's the same thing in these texts.
And also to add to that, it's not that even the stories that we have here in those three gospels is what everyone believed. These are just the narratives that were happening in these particular places in which these gospels are being written.
And we don't know.
There's all kinds of strange ideas that were throughout the Judea, Palestine, whatever.
Right, you have all the Gnostic Gospels that did survive, but we don't accept.
Absolutely.
There's all kinds of stuff in those.
All kinds of things
that we don't accept.
Yep.
So a lot of it did survive, but we don't take it as biblical or God's word.
Right. Well, these Gospels are so beautifully written. It's almost a tragedy to let them.
I kind of want to go read some of them.
They're so masterfully written. I mean, some of the best writing that humans have ever done. I mean, they're beautiful. They're masterpieces for sure, by highly educated and experienced Greek writers. Very educated and experienced. You want to look at John?
Let's hit it. Yeah.
Be sure and check out the 3rd episode for Did Jesus Rise from the Dead, where we focus on John and have some more conversation about it.